conexión entre residentes de cada cultura, incluyendo residentes de familias inmigrantes, es parte de una estrategia con muy éxito sobre la seguridad pública de todos.
Last question.
Can you put a price tag on the buckets of federal funding that you get and where those go?
Yeah, there's a couple different buckets, and we have been carefully reviewing them for the last several months at this point. So there are grants that have been awarded to Boston under the previous federal administration that have been contractually obligated, and so there have been documents signed legally in our position, legally obligating the successful delivery of those funds. That includes funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law and
she was speaking another language for a bit.
Transportation, climate, green infrastructure, childcare, jobs.
I think I missed
a lot of different categories.
That's
in the tens of millions of dollars that we are obligated but not yet received, although we worked very closely to get them in contract form so that they would be codified in those legal documents. And then there's funding that the city and cities around the country receive on a regular annual basis.
What's up, Rocky?
That could be funding for housing or funding for city services, public safety. Those, we're really not quite sure what the intended target is. What we do know is that we are going to continue complying with every bit of the legal requirements, as we always do, and that in our position, the city's on solid footing right now, given the work that's been put in to codify the discretionary grants that have been awarded.
Right,
and then in terms of annual funding, we're going to continue analyzing and understanding what the impacts are. But this is a wide-ranging threat that impacts every city around the country in the most basic services that are offered, on funding for police and fire and housing and addressing homelessness. And so I can't imagine that it will be implemented to the fullest. It affects blue states, it affects red states. It's really every single person in the country is impacted in some way here. So we will wait to see what happens, but we're also
what's going
have
on.
been putting in the work ahead of time to make sure that we would be on as solid legal footing as
possible. All the money we don't have.
Mayor, thank you, everyone.
Respond to Councilor Ed Flynn, who says that Boston Police Department could be doing a better job of cooperating with federal authorities.
Here we go.
I would be open to understanding any recommendations that the council or the councilors putting forward on that front. We work with the federal government every single day. As mentioned, our track record and the numbers when it comes to public safety show that our strategies and the types of collaborations that we have are making a difference. We've seen dramatic decreases in crime year over year, and
I don't believe the statistics that
when it comes to those individuals who
I don't know about you guys. I don't believe them.
Perpetrated harm in the community or who have committed crimes, our police department holds them accountable no matter who they are. Great. I have not heard.
All right, thank you, everyone.
She's great.
All right, that's it. Do you guys want me to rewind this and go over what she was talking about? I could go back. I could circle back unless you saw it already. She wasn't on very long.
She doesn't answer questions.
Here, let me go back a little bit.
Standing by our own municipal laws. It means standing by state laws. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court decision as well that reinforces local communities implement local laws, and federal government can implement their laws, and we are not forced to participate in their actions, just as they are not asked to
Mary, she's
carry
talking
out
about
filling
having to
potholes and
testify
other
in
things
front of
like that
Congress.
as well. So we each have our domain, and we feel very strongly that we're on solid legal ground as we're following the law every day.
Mayor, will you be sending them the paperwork?
How are they following the law?
You have not made a decision if you will physically go to D.C. will the city be providing the paperwork, the files that they're requesting?
We're still reviewing the letter and working through what all the details will be in terms of a response and if and when that happens.
Some other big city mayors have also received letters. Have you been able to speak with them at all? Do you plan to speak and sort of coordinate these different cities that have these priorities?
Our teams are in touch with many other cities, and I'm in contact with other mayors as well. We're all experiencing a lot of the same sense of chaos and destabilization right now, whether it is the threat of federal funds that are legally obligated being pulled away, or the sense of fear that's being created in the communities. At the local level, we're focused on getting our job done every day. Our job is the one that people rely on to get their kids to school, to get around the city. We're looking at potential for a bit of snow overnight even, and so that's our focus, is making sure we're there to serve our residents. And
This is a
DC
Boston
is
issue.
going to
I
play
mean, it's a
politics, let
Massachusetts
them
issue as well, but
do
Healy's
what
not
they're doing. We're going to stay focused on serving our communities here locally.
Would you defy a subpoena to testify before the committee?
We have not received a subpoena.
But would you defy one, or would you go to testify if you were subpoenaed?
We have not received one, so I don't have to speculate on that just yet.
Why do you think Boston is being singled out, given that the city is so much safer than others?
From the beginning, it's been clear that Boston's progress may seem threatening to some. We are here a community that prioritizes investing in every generation, being welcoming, inclusive, and then having the receipts and the results to show that that is
Bishop
a
Boomer,
way
you're
of
right about
serving
that.
everyone even better. We have had record lows in crime, the lowest ever recorded levels of gun violence now 3+ years in a row. We have had record high participation in youth summer jobs, in childcare expansion, in affordable housing creation. All
see
of
if I
that
can get
fits
the chat up
together,
on screen.
and we are remaining focused on continuing to deliver on those issues, which is what matters to our residents.
What's your response to
Here among residents, can you talk to just Boston residents who are feeling that panic about how they should be informed of their rights, or if you have any message for people just in terms of being afraid of potential ICE raids, or how people can conduct themselves in order to protect their environmental neighbors?
We are in intense and scary times for so many of our community members, and that is by design. It is intentional that the policies that have now been communicated, whether or not they are fully legal, and we see many of them working their way through the courts right now, including some that have already, even just in the first few
We
days
all
of this
have jobs.
administration, seem to have been struck down, at least in the first steps in the judicial system. And on immigration, for example, largely what we have
These
seen
are
across
just
the
people that are
country in
concerned
terms
with
of the
what's happening in
actions so
Boston.
far have mirrored the priorities and the same types of actions that took place under federal enforcement under the Biden administration. However, they're now including Fox News being embedded and going along on these actions, or bringing other celebrities to document what's happening, to create a sense of greater impact with that fear and destabilization. At the city level, we can't control what the federal government does. There are consequences to elections, and this administration unfortunately has the right to make some of the changes that they're talking about. They don't have the right to make some of the illegal changes that have also been put on the table, and that's up to the courts to sort that out, and Congress in a lot of ways to take action. What we know here at the local level is that we are not participating in the federal government's actions. We cannot overrule what they do, just as they cannot overrule or step into what is within our domain here at the local level. And within our domain, we're very clear in schools, in interactions with public safety officials, in community centers. We don't ask about immigration status. We hold everyone accountable, regardless of immigration status, for any crimes or harm that's committed. And we also work very hard to ensure that there's full access to services, regardless of
Fox News
immigration
does have
status,
boots
and
on
for
the ground.
everyone
They're
in
the
our
only ones
community.
that we're willing
What
to-
we have proven,
I don't-
and what we see in
like, all
Boston
news
every day,
stations are messed
is that
up,
the
right?
entire community
But
is safer
they do have
when
boots on the
everyone
ground. They are
feels
reporting this,
like they can
and they're
trust
at least letting
reaching
the
out
people
for
know
help,
what the hell is going
going
on
to
in
their
their
neighbor,
backyards.
taking their kids to school, people, reporting crimes if they have information, calling 911 when they need help. That helps every single person in our community, and we have the numbers to back that up.
Can you put a price tag?
¿Nos puede decir nuevamente, va a ir usted a testificar y cuéntanos también si va a la ciudad a cooperar o a ofrecer algún tipo de información a quienes nos están pidiendo ahora mismo?
This is where she starts.
Sí,
This is where she starts speaking
ahora
Spanish.
es un tiempo
I
de
believe.
miedo. Con las comunicaciones del gobierno federal desafortunadamente es el derecho del gobierno
Does anybody
federal
here speak Spanish? I have no idea
participar
what she's
y
saying.
implementar cada acciones, pero al mismo tiempo es el derecho del gobierno municipal proteger nuestros residentes y en otras maneras. Hemos recibido el mensaje, pero estamos todavía viendo las consecuencias y podemos decidir y responder después sobre ese mensaje. Cada día nuestro objetivo, el foco es en proveer, implementar el nivel más alto de calidad en
Yeah, I
nuestros
think she's in quite a
servicios
bit of trouble too,
municipales,
you know?
En las escuelas públicas, en nuestras bibliotecas, en industrias y trabajo para nuestros residentes. Somos una ciudad para todos, una ciudad de inmigrantes y de miembros de nuestra comunidad de cada cultura y cada generación, y es nuestra responsabilidad de proveer
Yeah, I don't know why there's no interpreter. I was wondering the same thing.
la manera de comunicación con confianza y en colaboración entre nuestras comunidades y otros niveles de gobierno estatal y cuando en colaboración para la seguridad pública de nuestros residentes con el gobierno federal también.
¿Cree que puede ser como un tipo de ataque que están haciendo estas ciudades santuarios, incluyendo a Boston? ¿Y de eso lo haría pensar usted tal vez en
Yeah,
un poco de las políticas, de cómo se lleva a cabo el trabajo aquí como ciudad santuario?
Sí, es enteramente política en este momento. Boston,
Yeah, Josh,
tenemos
it should be interesting. I'm curious to see what he comes up with.
tenemos el estatus y el reconocimiento como la ciudad la más segura en todo el país. Entonces, nuestros policías, nuestra conexión entre residentes de cada cultura, incluyendo
I'm curious if somebody else steps up to run.
familias inmigrantes, es parte de
But
una
I'm interested to hear
estrategia
what Josh Kraft
con muy
has to
éxito
say.
sobre la seguridad pública de todos.
Last question.
Can you put a price tag?
By the way, our
on- can you
podcast,
put a
I didn't
price tag
announce
on
it yet on the
buckets
channel,
of
but
federal funding that you get and where
Thursday
those go?
is going to be a live podcast, guys, in the
there's
studio.
a couple different buckets, and we have been carefully reviewing them for the last several months at this point. So there are grants that have been awarded to Boston
South Park going to have a
under
blast
the
with her.
previous
Yeah,
federal
probably.
administration that have been contractually
There's a lot of content
obligated. And so there have been documents signed legally, in our position, legally obligating the successful delivery of those funds. That includes funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law and other transportation, climate, green infrastructure, childcare, jobs, a lot of different categories. That's in the tens of millions of dollars that we are obligated but not yet received, although we worked very closely to get them in contract form so that
Yeah,
they
the
would
whole
be
crime thing,
codified in
you know,
those legal
saying crime is
documents.
down.
And then there's
I'm not
funding
discrediting
that
what she's saying,
the
but I
city
don't
and cities
necessarily
around the
believe
country receive
that
on a
that
regular
data is
annual
100%
basis.
accurate.
That could be funding for housing or
I could be wrong, but-
funding for city services, public safety. Those, we're really not quite sure what the intended target is. What we do know is that we are going to continue complying with every bit of the legal requirements, as we always do, and that in our position, the city's on solid
I don't
footing
know how
right now,
she got
given the work
elected,
that's
to be
been put
honest with
in
you.
to codify the discretionary grants that have been awarded. And then in terms of annual funding, we're going to continue analyzing and understanding what the impacts are. But this is a wide-ranging threat that impacts
Okay, thank you for
every
trying to
city around the
translate.
country in the most basic services that are offered, on funding for police and fire and housing and
Troy, what are you talking
addressing
about,
homelessness.
Redfin's
And so I can't imagine that it will be implemented to the fullest. It affects blue states, it affects red states. It's really every single person
Explore, yes,
in the
we
country is
we are
impacted
a
in
free
some way
nation.
here.
It's
So
just that
we will
there's
wait
just
to
been
see
a
what happens, but we're also
inflated amount of people that came here
have been putting
okay?
in the work
And
ahead of
even the
time to make sure
countries
that we would be
sent them
on
here
as solid
don't want
legal
them
footing
back.
as possible.
All right, that's
Thank you,
essentially what
everyone.
the issue is. And nobody here has an issue with legal immigration. A lot of my friends are legal immigrants, and they're also upset about what is
cooperating with
happening.
federal authorities.
I would be open
It's just a
to
fact.
understanding any recommendations that the council or the councilors putting forward on that front. We work with the federal government every single day. As mentioned, our track record and the numbers when it comes
Yeah,
to public
word salad.
safety show that
That's accurate.
our strategies and the types of collaborations that we have are making a difference. We've seen dramatic decreases in crime year over year, and when it comes to those individuals who have perpetrated harm in the community or who have committed crimes, our
I will
police
admit, after I
department holds
saw
them
those
accountable
videos, guys,
no
I
matter who they
felt,
are. Great.
I don't know, it was a very uneasy feeling for me.
I have not heard.
I understand why they wanted to put it out there, but you know, she was right about one thing. It does amplify the public's knowledge, and it does instill not necessarily fear, but people are becoming informed of what is going on. You know, some people rather become desensitized to certain issues, and by Fox News covering a lot of this, yes, it's a little unnerving to watch, but it's something that is necessary.
First term, but we're going to have
Oh, my bad.
an even
But anyway, that's it, guys. Met her a few times. Lost in space. Yeah, she doesn't represent all citizens. You know, the fact is that I think the main issue with a lot of what is going on here is that decisions are made without the acknowledgement of the public, and I think that's what a lot of you guys, at least you know me myself, is upset about. It seems as though we don't have a say in what happens in the state that we live in. Redfin has been caught racketeering and committing Sherman Act violations plus price fixing. I'll have to look into that. I'm not a huge fan of Redfin. They've actually changed their entire business model. They used to be so basically Redfin had a business model where the agent would be salaried and then they would receive bonus commissions for every closed transaction. The way Redfin gets a lot of its clients is because they have a huge back-end infrastructure and their web portal is actually very good. So they kind of pigeonhole people into using, you know, they kind of pigeonhole people into using the platform. On top of that, Redfin advertises, you know, things like, 1% to like they advertise fees that aren't necessarily true. Once you find out and you pull back that curtain, that's what happens. But anyway, they've transitioned their business model into a commissioned business model, similar to what traditional real estate brokerages have. Because I think effectively they've probably been losing money by paying agents a salary plus bonuses. So now I think they're going back to a more traditional model. Redfin's only in like around major cities and stuff. They're not like, they're everywhere, but they're normally in like major cities, in and thereabouts. But I'm going to look into that. I like Boston too, Troy. I like Massachusetts, right? We do a ton of stuff with our kids here. We go to the farms. We go to the zoos. We go to, the beaches. We go up to New Hampshire. We go up to Maine. I like it here. The fact is, I think everybody likes it here. But it's also a fact that while we do like it here, we're upset with the way things are being handled, right? That's what it boils down to. If people didn't like being here, then they wouldn't voice their opinion. That's my opinion. They wouldn't voice their opinion. But the fact is, I think people enjoy being here. They just want to see what is happening get better. You know, the public wants to have a voice too. They don't want decisions made for them. They want to be part of the decision-making process. That's effectively why we're starting the live podcast, by the way. So on Thursday, it's going to be Thursday at 1 o'clock. There might be some kinks, okay, that we're going to get through. We're going to do the best that we can. But anyway, on Thursday, I have a gentleman from the small, what is it called? The SPOA, which is the Small Property Owners Association. I have the VP from there. We're going to talk about the tax situation in Boston. We're going to try to uncover a lot of things that are happening just in general with real estate, with taxes, so on and so forth. But we're planning on having we have a whole laundry list of people that actually want to be on the podcast. So what's going to happen is we're going to essentially try to get people that are involved in the decision-making process here in Massachusetts. As a matter of fact, we're working on, I want to get the auditor on as well to try to explain what is happening, because I think that's what people want to see. I think people want to understand what is the systemic problem that is actually happening throughout Massachusetts and Boston in itself. And if I'm able to do a one-on-one interview live with these people, I'm not going to put them on the hot seat or put them on the spot per se. I think we'll have a very civil conversation. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to expose what is actually happening in the state that we live in. Period. End of story. You know what I mean? That's what we're going to try to do. You guys have any questions for me? Because I do have some appointments that I need to head on. I have to get ready for 1 o'clock. Taxes have gone up $2,400 a year in 3 years. Taxes go up everywhere, but every single place you live, taxes are going to go up year after year, right? And depending on what you live in, if it's newer construction, if it's older construction, there's different assessments based on how new or how old something is. So taxes could vary substantially. But the issue is that they're taxing residents higher. I mean, she was at a point where she wanted to tax commercial businesses, as you know. Then that didn't get passed, so now she's taxing some of the residents. I guess it's only going to be temporary. But, my issue with the entire thing, as I've said before in previous videos, is why have to do that at all, okay? Why are we so behind on budgets? And that's why I think the auditor needs to get involved and sort of pick these pieces of the puzzle apart. On top of that, there's a lot of towns and there's a lot of there's a lot of areas where people are behind on budget. Okay, my town is behind on budget severely. Okay, and I understand things have gotten more expensive, but if you could anticipate things getting more expensive, then there should be a buffer there. Right? Like, I'm not some sort of mathematical, I'm not the best at math, guys, right? But somebody that understands these things. I don't understand how so many places could be behind on their budget. It's really wild to me. There's something going on. That's basically what I'm trying to tell you. FAFO party is over. Yeah, I think Wu is going to be in. I mean, if I was in her position, I would. I mean, she's in a tough spot. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And the fact is, when she was on previously, prior to the Trump administration, getting into office, she was on there, and so was our governor. They're on there saying things like, we're going to oppose this and oppose that. We're not going to help with this. We're not going to help with that. And then all of a sudden, their tunes change. New administration comes in. They see things that are actually happening, and honestly, the only concern I think that they have is the federal funding, right? That's probably what it boils down to. Fox News is the boogeyman. Hang on, I'm trying to read through your comments, guys. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. Somebody said she's not speaking for me or the mass residents. I know there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are just not satisfied with the way. I mean, that's there in every state, guys. A lot of people are not 100% satisfied, right? We always have a couple sides of the coin here. But, we just seem like, in my opinion, it just seems like we're trending in the same direction. And I think that people are disappointed. Okay, I think that's a good word to use. I think people are disappointed in the way things are being handled. I mean, Jesus, you should have saw the emails that I got from that Papa's that's essentially going to be closing that children's hospital. People are really upset about that. And you think to yourself, like, this is a state-run facility. And I could be wrong. I would think that the state has the responsibility to some point, care for these properties and these buildings. So why were they neglecting, why did they neglect these buildings for so long to the point of disrepair? I feel really sorry for the kids, for the employees and the community that's happening to in Canton. It's unbelievable. I would love to do like a live stream from in there and just hear what they have to say. Both the employees and the people that work there, and also the children. I'm sure the children are upset too. Just gave themselves an 11% raise. Yeah, that's wild to me. So they do get raises. I think it's every 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. But that was one of the higher of raises that they got. It's really wild. It's really wild. Actually, I could show you guys something. Hang on a second. Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute here. Let me keep this up. Let me open this. I want to show you something. Give me a second. This is like an impromptu live stream, right? This was Mayor Wu when she was talking about... Let me see if I can pull it up. Here it is.
And
let me pull this clip up. Did you guys see this?
Fox News embedded going, but with Fox News embedded going along with Dr. Phil, with this element of wanting to sensationalize and stoke greater fear about it. So we know that the federal government will continue to do what they do on the federal side. We will continue to do what we do on the city side, which is keeping everyone safe here. And we don't have the authority to, let's say, stop or overrule what they're doing in their domain, but neither do they in our domain either.
Yeah, so she's saying, and I kind of said the same thing to a point, right? I said, like, when I saw those videos from Fox News, I'm like, Jesus, I do showings and, like, I'm in these communities, trying to, like, double park my car, my four ways on and like to try to show a condo or whatever. And I'm walking around, sometimes I'm walking with clients, whatever it may be. And it was really scary to see what was going on. So in one hand, she's right? Like it is scary to see what's going on. But in the other hand, she's trying to say that they're sensationalizing what's happening. No, this is what's happening, right? And I understand that the public may be concerned with this, but I think the public has a right to be concerned. That's my opinion. Picking low fruit. I mean, come on. What do you want me to say? I'm just giving my opinion here, right? Yeah, it's really wild times. It really, really is. Sorry, I'm reading through the comments here. Wu has failed as Healy has more concern on putting the speed bumps on vital routes to hospitals. Yeah, the thing with the hospital, I mean, they're going to make them go 100 miles away. Like, I mean, it doesn't really add up to me. Okay, to have your, those kids. And then they said, as I said earlier in the video, they said that they would have better care at home, yet they want to move them to a higher tech facility. So which is it, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah, Wu's she's in a pretty tough spot. There's no doubt about it. But anyway, I have to get ready, guys. I have an appointment. I'm gonna have to get ready for at 1 o'clock. So I'm gonna take off. But make sure I'm probably gonna post the live stream thumbnail later today, and that should be a good time. I think we're gonna have a good time doing the live stream. I worked at Western MA Hospital, great facility, but not for kids. Right, exactly. Yeah, there's really not many outlets. So, MA Patriot, you're right. Like, there's really not many outlets where people could get together and talk about, the issues that they're concerned with. It's just is what it is. And I think that's part of the problem too. A lot of these news stations have their comments disabled, and they don't want to get the opinion. Like, look, I didn't remove D from the chat. I mean, they could, her, whoever it is, maybe it's a guy, I don't know. I'm not going to remove them from the chat, right? Like, they have the right to say what they want to say. It doesn't matter to me. These are just my opinions. These are how I feel. But the fact is that people just don't have an outlet to express how they feel about the issues that are going on. And as I said, circling back, I think that if people really didn't care about what was going on, they wouldn't express how they felt. And that's why I think that, deep down, I think truly people want to live in this state. At least a good majority of people, they just want to see it trend upward, not downward, And I was having right before I get off, I was having a conversation. One of you guys, maybe they're watching now. I had a call with a gentleman yesterday looking to potentially relocate to Massachusetts. And, the fact of the matter is, like, some people are concerned because of what is happening to continue to live here or to move here. And the price of housing is just unbelievable. It's really, really crazy. It's out of control. And I can't see anything that they're going to do to try to help alleviate that stress, because it's usually a supply and demand problem. And when it's a supply and demand problem and the demand is outpacing the supply, there's a big issue. My daughter's high school is trying to educate 23 different language speakers. English, it's failing. Yeah, so I'm friends with quite a bit of educators as well. And, obviously behind the scenes, it's difficult on the educators. It's also difficult on the children that are in the class too. I mean, everybody should have the right to be educated, but what happens is there's a bottleneck there for student to teacher ratios, and that affects education in the long run, right? Same thing happens with hospitals. Like, resources is a big thing. I really believe we could flip this state red. The people have conservative hearts and minds. They have been conditioned to vote blue. I moved to Maine. What part of Maine? We go up to Old Orchard Beach a lot with our kids. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that, buddy. Shayla, what part of Maine did you move to? Boycott, Massachusetts. Near Waterville, Central Maine. Nice. It's nice up there. Yeah, it's nice up in Maine. We like Maine. We go up to New Hampshire. We go to, the Hampton Beach thing. My kids like the arcades there. Where was your condo at? I've never been to Winthrop, Maine. My daughter is an RN and works full-time, and her husband works full-time and can't sniff a home because the cost is so bad. Yeah, it's brutal. Yeah, the cost is insane. I mean, just if you want to get a single-family home, greater Boston area, eastern Massachusetts, you're talking like around $800,000. It's really wild. It's really hard. I even, so yesterday during the conversation, we were talking about how the process of buying a home should be fun, and it has not been fun for a long time. It's not fun. Mike, you still playing 2-5 on the regular? What do you mean by that? The taxes in New Hampshire, I know this much about New Hampshire, I think at least. The taxes in New Hampshire are high, traditionally because there's transfer tax on both sides, I believe. So when you here in Massachusetts, when there's a real estate sale, poker. When there's a real estate sale in Massachusetts, the buyer doesn't pay. Sometimes they're called tax stamps or tax certificates, so on and so forth. The seller actually pays them. Okay, the seller pays those. So after they buy, if they go to sell, they have to pay them. In New Hampshire, I believe it's split both ways. So I think that the buyer pays a portion and then the seller pays a portion as well. But New Hampshire, their property, anywhere, New Hampshire's property taxes are higher, and they don't have income tax in New Hampshire, right? Is that true? Sometimes, like, there's other. Essentially, what happens is if they can't tax you here, they're going to tax you there. That's basically how it goes. Yeah, water is cold up at Hampton Beach. It's real cold, but it's better than no water, right? No, Mike still playing 2-5 on the regular poker. No, I don't play poker, man. Yeah, no income tax. So, of course, they're going to tax you some way, somehow. So, real estate tax is how they're trying to collect their taxes. It's just how it goes. It took me 5 years to purchase a home here in Massachusetts, moved back from the Midwest. Sort of wish I stayed out there. Mortgage tripled what I was paying. Hopefully you refied or you bought during that time. Boston has a problem that'll never be fixed. The days of being a bleeding heart liberal is over. Yeah, the Selena Gomez video was really ridiculous. Yeah. It's $300,000 in materials just to build a house. I am planning one this spring. So I used to build houses. I was not the carpentry side, but I was an electrician, and we built a lot of homes. We did a ton of additions, ton of remodeling. I've been in thousands upon thousands of homes. I did that for 10 years prior to selling real estate. And, the cost of construction, there's a couple things. So not only the material cost is high, but the labor cost is high. And the labor cost is high because nobody wants to sell their houses because they don't want to sell at a 2.5% rate and get a lesser quality house at a 7% rate that's effectively higher. So contractors are in high demand, and they're basically able to charge whatever the hell they want because they are in high demand. So that's why building a house right now, there's no way to save. There's really no way to save, if that makes sense. It's really, really difficult. On top of that, a lot of these towns, states, cities, whatever, especially here in Massachusetts, you figure Cambridge, Somerville, Boston too. When you're trying to do anything and you're trying to rehabilitate, let's say a property that's standing there, let's say a multifamily home converted into condos, the permitting process and the red tape is just ridiculous. I know one project that's going on right now in Somerville, and it's taken 5 years, and they still are not on the market yet. It's absolutely insane. Yeah, supply and demand is a big deal. Bought my house 15 years ago for $300. Town now says my house is worth $606. My property taxes went up $1,200. The property insurance is crazy. So the town doesn't necessarily determine what your property value is. They're determining that based on the assessment, but that is not a true representation of value. As a matter of fact, you could kind of reverse engineer. So certain places, certain towns, I should say, this is not a one-for-one metric, but like a lot of places, you could quantify that data and figure out how far above or below the assessment places are selling for. 99.9% of the time, especially in Eastern Massachusetts, they're selling for substantially above the assessment. The only way to find out what it's worth is to have a realtor give you a CMA or to hire an appraiser. But what you can do, so if you're looking to get your taxes reassessed, if you guys need any resources for getting your taxes reassessed, you need an appraiser, potentially you need an attorney. What they could do is they could pull comparables and bring an argument to the table where this is what this assessment is, this is what this assessment is on this property, and so on and so forth. And that's a potential avenue to decrease your taxes. It does cost some money to do that, but there's certain times of the year you could do it too. Mike, what is the standard rate for charge for sellers in Boston really depends on the agent, I would say. So normally what I do is I try to split it evenly between the buyer agent and seller agent. Sometimes it's 2.5%, 2.5%. Sometimes it's 3% to the listing agent if I were the listing agent, and 2.5% to the buyer's agent. Depends on the amount of expenses that I have to incur when I'm listing the property. Could be staging, like unusual things, right? It makes sense. Everybody's broke. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that, man. Don't buy a house right now and don't build one. Either way, keep your money. You know what? There's something that I talk about, and it's a really hard thing to sum up. But, you know, throughout history, there's something that I call the cost of waiting, okay? And essentially, there's never really a good time to buy a house, okay? And what I mean by that is this. If you buy a house today at 7%, okay, and let's say it costs you $500,000 for said house, okay? Given the statistics of the market, if there's year-over-year appreciation, okay, and you're waiting for like a 3 or a 4% rate, what happens is there's the disparity between what a house is worth today versus what it may be worth in a year or two, okay? So or I should say, is what this home is going to be worth in a year or 2 years, does that essentially, let's say, cut out what the interest rate savings would be? So if that same $500,000 house today is worth $600,000 2 years down the road from today, would it have been better to buy the house at $500,000 and received, you know, let's say year over year $50,000 or $40,000 worth of appreciation? Or is it better to wait and then to try to get in at a lower rate? So with a lower rate, you have more borrowing power and you could buy more home. There's no doubt about it. But the cost of waiting it's a hard thing. So normally what I tell my clients is make it a life decision, right? Don't base it on, like, if you're playing with fire, trying to figure out the rates, the cost, you know, you're trying to figure out if the market's going to crash or this or that. Like, if it makes sense financially to do it, then you do it. If it doesn't make sense financially and it's going to be a major quality of life change for you, your family, whoever it may be, then you do it now. If it's not, then you wait. That's the best way. That's the best advice I could give you guys. I'm going to buy when it falls apart. It's coming. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know what's going to happen. It's gotten to the point where I think that, I mean, even myself, I have clients, right? I meet one at 1 o'clock today. It's gotten to the point where the cost of housing is substantially greater than the amount of income people are earning. And it's rising steadily, and it keeps on rising and rising. So what happens when the jobs, or I'm sorry, the housing market is already outpacing the amount of income people get from their jobs, right? And it's that disparity is only getting wider and wider. That gap essentially is getting wider and wider and wider. So is there going to come a time where things just become unaffordable in the city or state that you live in because the jobs can't keep up with the price of houses? That could very well be possible. I will tell you this much. Here's a really good statistic. So I don't know what it is as of today, but the last time I checked, 45% of the homes that were sold in the Boston or greater Boston area, and I might be wrong on that 45%, but I know it's pretty darn close, they were sold to a cash buyer. So essentially, if you are a buyer today, 1 in every 3 of your offers you're bidding against a cash buyer, essentially, because it's like more than a third, which is just absolutely insane. And just to give you a little bit more data, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Mike, but what was it a couple years ago? Back before COVID, it was like 16%. So it's more than doubled. Cash buyers have more than doubled. And it's not just people coming from, you know, out of state or out of the country that are paying cash. Believe it or not, and I've said this before, and somebody like downvoted my comment. Not today. This was a while ago. There's people out there, and I know because I list houses, and I have 135 agents, guys, between like 5 or 6 states. Okay. And there's a lot of people out there that are taking cash out of their IRA, paying for the house in cash, and they're waiting for rates to come down. That way they lock in the house. They don't have to, you know, worry about appraisals or X, Y, and Z. And I'm not recommending this, by the way, not a recommendation. But that's what they're doing to offset the cost of what rates are. And then they'll refi down the line. Did you see they're going to tax sugary drinks? Did you guys see that? It's like insane. Who doesn't compare? Get into the tiny home market. I think traditional home buying will become harder and harder to do. They need to lift some regulations, and like a lot of it has to deal with zoning. They need to be a little bit more lenient. But the problem with that is that. Oh, thanks, Marie. Hi, Mass Deporter Security Citizens. You didn't. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. You know, the fact is, there's a lot of red tape, especially in Massachusetts, when it comes to housing, and not only building new housing, but repurposing old housing. And I'm actually going to have a developer on the podcast as well talking about this, who may be getting out of the market because of the regulations that are there. And, you know, it's a balance because people don't want to have like this like huge complex in their community. It's funny because if you go to like the Facebook groups, the sugar tax, if you go to the Facebook groups, people complain about two things, okay? They complain about their taxes, and then they'll also complain about more commercialized buildings getting put in their town. But the fact is, those offset the cost of your real estate taxes because they essentially pay more in real estate taxes, which helps with the residential tax rates. So like there's never a win-win. But to get on top, back on the topic of like red tape and regulations, you know, what happens here is that a lot of people are in the position that they've been living in these communities for years. They don't want some high-rise building in their backyard, which I can understand on one hand. But the fact is, if that would allow their family members or their kids to move to the same town, they would probably be for it, right? So it's like a double standard to some extent. But it's a hard thing to try to fix. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. Sometime, and if I offend you guys, I apologize. But this is reality. So what Boston does and what Massachusetts does, instead of building new housing, which is substantially harder, they will give out money to first-time homebuyers. The issue with just handing money out to first-time homebuyers is that normally those programs are they sort of pigeonhole the buyer into buying in certain markets that have like an AMI income limits, and you have to put, you know, there's different percentages there. And what it does is it artificially inflates certain markets. So the person that's pre-approved naturally without needing some kind of program or down payment assistance or X, Y, and Z, all of a sudden now they're not only buying or bidding against people that have a traditional financing, they're buying against people that are getting some assistance from the state and the city. Okay, depending on where it is. Not saying it's a bad thing, but during a housing crisis where there's a supply and demand issue, that is a problem. If there was enough supply to satisfy the demand, I could see that being okay. But building more houses will, down the line, start to reduce the cost. But we're still seeing the effects of when the market crashed back in 07 and 08. There was a ton of houses that weren't built. There's plenty of MA citizens who could quickly fill these roles. They're being used for cheap labor. Tax enough already. Yeah, the sugar thing. I was going to cover that too, but it's like it's just so unbelievable to me. The thing is, you know, when it comes down to like sugary drink, like I don't drink any sugary drinks, guys. I drink, you know, me and my wife drink. We drink Polar, right? I like the Polar seltzer waters. I'm not a huge fan of soda and stuff like that. But anyway, you know, the fact is with the sugary drinks, you remember when that documentary came out, Super Size Me, and like everybody was like boycotting McDonald's and all this stuff and like fast food. Look at where the United States is today. Okay. We're in worse shape than ever. So like, I don't think statistically by putting a tax on sugar is going to alleviate the pressure of people buying sugary things, okay, in order to create better health, let's say. Maybe that's like the end game goal. I just don't see that happening. People are going to make decisions on their own, regardless of what the data shows, okay? It's just what it is. That's my opinion. They eat restaurants, buy products, and our moms... So she said, hi, mass deportations is scary because citizens benefit too. They eat at restaurants, buy products at our mom and pop stores and other businesses. It could collapse our economy. Get rid of dangerous. Let me see. Get rid of the dangerous, I think is what she said. Yeah, I mean, so statistically, there is a lot of contribution. But I think the fact is what most people, I believe, okay, what most people are upset about is the amount. Okay. I think that 4 years ago, people were a little bit more emotionally attached to the circumstances. But as prices rose, and I'm not saying that this is the sole reason prices rose. All right. It was a lot of what the last administration did. But the fact is that emotional aspect of it has kind of gone out the door as people are becoming more. They're becoming less sensitive to the topic because it's affecting them, it's affecting their families, it's affecting their children, coworkers, employees in some way, manner, or form. Okay, and I think that's part of the issue. So when you have millions upon millions upon millions, I said earlier in a video that it was 8 million. I just saw JD Vance say it was like closer to 20 million. I don't know what the number actually is, but that is a lot of people. And when you have countries that don't even want to accept their people back, it really makes you wonder, like, why wouldn't they want to take them back? And I said that before in the video I posted. It just comes down to the fact that I think most people are okay with legal immigration, but we can't just have everybody. Imagine everybody from everywhere came here. What do you think it would do to our economy and our infrastructures, right? Imagine that. Imagine we had 20 million people every 4 years come to the United States. What do you think would happen, right? Look at it in that perspective. And some people say I'm a conservative or whatever. Like, guys, look, I'm good at like problem solving, like analysis, right? I come from a real estate background. I've been doing this forever. I don't think anybody in their right mind could say if 20 million people, let's say 5 million people per year came to the United States, it wouldn't cause a strain on our infrastructure and our systems. That's part of the problem, okay? I think that's part of the problem. And as a matter of fact, most people that are here as immigrants that came here legally also have a problem with it, right? They're essentially getting a lot. They're taking a lot of resources away. And I'm not saying don't help people. That's not the point of this conversation. The point of the conversation is we need to help people that could help themselves. Okay? We need to help the people that could help themselves. Period. End of story. Those are the people that are coming here legally. Otherwise, we will create even more bottlenecks. Yes, our infrastructure is already overloaded. Yeah. Brett, so what did Brett say? I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up, guys. There's a lot of comments in here. You can't tax the fat up people. Come on. Raymond may have what did I miss that Raymond said? Sorry, I'm reading through all these comments, guys. What's up, Casa Grande? I'm half Italian and half Lithuanian. That's why my last name is Urban. But my mom's last name was Ravillo. My wife is half Polish and half Italian. Ultimately, I think what's happening, throughout the country, I mean, you could like, President Trump or not. I think that the fact is that some change needed to happen, right? The scales have to be balanced to a point. I think that it's the circumstances where what happened over the last 4 years was, it really did feel like we were totally living, I always say this, like in another dimension. At least that's how it felt to me. At least I feel like there's some, I think people want to feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. But for the last 4 years, like you couldn't even see the tunnel to some extent. And I mean, I'm always hopeful, right? I'm always hopeful that things go good. So we'll see what happens. Instead of taxing the junk eaters for their bad food intake, how about we reward them with something for eating less sugar, give them a reason to want to? Yeah, you know what the problem is here in America? Just the whole culture of food. Americans just naturally overeat. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of, medicine. I don't know if it's because of just the culture or whatever it is. But we only eat one meal a day. Literally, we eat one meal a day. I eat once a day. So does my wife. Sometimes I'll eat lunch, very, very light lunch. But I usually only eat one meal a day. And that's usually at like 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock whenever we make dinner or grab takeout or whatever it is. Mike Urban, should they raise the minimum of affordable housing percentage in apartment buildings? That's a good question, to be honest with you. I would have to look at the data to see what would create a net positive or a net negative. So you may know this, you may not, Brett, but every single time, at least I think every single time, you build a certain amount of newer condos or like a complex or something like that, I think it's required to have 1 or 2 affordable units. If they increase that, I don't see that being a bad thing, right? I don't see that being a bad thing at all. But America is all about bigger, better, go big or go home. Affordable means you cannot afford housing. How is this someone else's problems? Yeah, I don't disagree. Like there's multiple stances you could take on the affordable housing thing. Like there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. 100%. Guys, what happened in, throughout the United States, it's part of our culture. It's part of our history. It is what it is. The only thing that we could do right now is just see what we could do to get back on track. You know what I mean? That's my opinion. If the housing is 40B, then it's 20 to 25% affordable. Okay. So you're talking about making it 40%, like changing it to 40%. Yeah, I would have to look more into that. I don't want to comment on it because I normally don't, most of my clients are not in that looking for affordable housing to some extent, right? So I'm not that educated on it, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. But I would have to look into it, and then I would be educated on it. Many of the additives in processed food create hunger to make people want to eat more. Yeah, that's 100% true. Yep. It's just how it is. I don't know why. I mean, I hope RFK could do some things in terms of like the health of this country. I think it's super important that we are literally the unhealthiest, I think one of the most unhealthy countries in the world, which is just wild to me. Because we also have some of like the best minds, the best technology, data, so on and so forth. Yet we're in this position. It's harsh to say, but history says the only people with rights to a land are the people who could defend to hold it. All right, guys, how brutal is Wu? Yeah, Wu's in, I think that she's a little shook, to be honest with you. I think she's a little bit shook. All right, guys, I gotta go get ready for an appointment. But this has been fun. I again, later today, I'm going to post something about Thursday's live podcast. We're going to try to do them either weekly or bi-weekly. We actually have like a laundry list of people that we're going to have on, all from different sectors, whether it be business, real estate, political, whatever it may be. And, we're going to try to do the best that we can together. That's basically what it's going to boil down to. So I'm going to hop off, it was really fun. This was very impromptu. Appreciate you guys being here with me. And I'll see you again. I'll probably have a video out tomorrow too. So see you guys. Have a good day.